The hospital room was filled with tension and excitement. A young couple had been waiting for this moment for months. The wife lay exhausted but glowing with joy, holding their newborn baby in her arms. She looked at the tiny face, so innocent, so fragile, and tears filled her eyes. She whispered softly, "Our baby. Our little miracle." The husband stood by her side, nervous but proud. He leaned in to look at his child, expecting to see a reflection of himself, a child with familiar features. Skin like his or his wife's. But the moment his eyes fell on the baby, his smile vanished. His body stiffened. He stared, then blinked. As if he thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. The baby's skin was pale white, unlike his own darker tone or his wife's warm complexion. For a few seconds, he said nothing. He just stared, his face frozen in disbelief. Then slowly, suspicion crept into his eyes. He stepped back, his chest rising and falling faster. His wife looked up at him, smiling weakly. "Isn't he beautiful?" she whispered. But instead of agreeing, the husband asked in a harsh voice, "Whose baby is this?" The words cut through the room like a knife. The wife's smile disappeared. She stared at him, shocked. "What? What do you mean?" "He's ours. He's your son." The husband shook his head. "No, don't lie to me. Look at him. He's white." "How could this be my child?" She tried to explain. Her voice trembled as she said, "Babies can look different at birth. Sometimes they change as they grow. He's ours, I swear to you." But the husband's mind was clouded with anger and betrayal. He couldn't hear her words. All he could see was a baby who, to him, didn't look like his. All he could feel was the sting of imagined betrayal. The nurses exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared speak. The room that should have been filled with joy was now heavy with doubt and anger. The wife cried, clutching the baby closer. "Please believe me," she begged. "You are his father. I have never been unfaithful to you. Please, look at him again. He's ours." But the husband's face hardened. "No," he said coldly. "I don't believe you." He turned his back, ignoring her sobs, ignoring the tiny cries of the baby. Without another word, he stormed out of the hospital room, leaving her broken, confused, and alone. In the days that followed, the betrayal cut deeper. The husband refused to come back. He told his family and friends that the child was not his. Rumors spread quickly. Neighbors whispered, relatives judged, and everywhere the wife went, she felt eyes on her. Some pitied her, some mocked her, but no one knew the truth. At night, when the baby cried in her arms, she cried too. She whispered to him, "It's not your fault. You are innocent." One day, the truth will be known. But inside, her heart was breaking. She had lost not only her husband's trust, but also the happiness of her child's birth. The husband, meanwhile, lived in bitterness. He told himself he had done the right thing. He told himself he couldn't stay with a woman who had betrayed him. But late at night, when he was alone, doubts haunted him. He remembered her tears, her desperate pleas, her words, "You are his father." The memory gnawed at him, but his pride was stronger than his doubt. He chose to believe the worst. The baby grew, loved only by his mother. She gave him all her strength, all her care, and all her love. She tried to shield him from the whispers, tried to smile through her pain. But every time she thought of the day her husband walked away, her chest tightened with sorrow. The betrayal was not just the husband leaving, it was his refusal to trust her, his refusal to see the truth in her eyes. What should have been the happiest moment of their lives had turned into the darkest. And as the years passed, the wounds stayed open, waiting for the day when the truth would finally come to light. 3 years passed like a storm for the woman who had been left behind. The day her husband walked out of the hospital still haunted her, but she had no time to drown in sorrow. She had a baby to raise, a baby who was innocent of everything. A baby who deserved love no matter how the world judged, dead every morning. She woke early, holding her little boy close, whispering prayers over him before the day began. He had his father's eyes, the same curious spark, the same mischievous grin, but people only saw his fair skin. Whenever she walked through the market or passed by neighbors, she felt the whispers follow her like shadows. "That child doesn't look like her," one woman muttered. "Poor thing, abandoned by her husband," another replied. "I heard she cheated," someone else whispered. The words pierced her heart, but she kept walking. She never argued, never defended herself in public. She had learned that people loved gossip more than truth. All she could do was pour her strength into her son, making sure he never felt unloved. The boy grew quickly, full of laughter and energy. He was clever, asking endless questions about the world around him. But as he grew, he too began to notice the difference. "Mama," he asked one day, touching his pale arm, "why do I look different from you?" The question broke her heart, but she smiled and kissed his forehead. "Because you are special, my son. God made you this way, and you are perfect." But deep inside, her wounds bled. She knew he deserved answers, answers that only time and truth could bring. Meanwhile, Atiyah's husband lived far away, burying himself in work and pride. On the outside, he looked successful, but inside, doubts chewed at him. He remembered the night he walked out, the look on his wife's face, the way she swore the baby was his. For 3 years, he tried to silence the questions that kept him awake at night. But they always returned. What if I was wrong? What if he is mine? His family, once supportive of his decision, also began to soften. They saw the little boy at family gatherings, running and laughing, and many remarked, "He has your eyes. He even tilts his head like you do." The husband grew restless, unable to ignore the similarities. One evening, his sister confronted him. "You left her without proof. You walked away from your own blood, maybe? Don't you want to know the truth?" The words hit him hard. For the first time, he considered it seriously. He decided to request a DNA test not because he fully believed yet, but because he needed closure. He needed proof to silence the torment in his mind. When he approached his wife after 3 years, she was shocked to see him standing at her door. Her first instinct was to slam it shut. But she didn't. She stood there, holding their son's hand, staring at the man who had once been her whole world. "I want a DNA test," he said bluntly, his voice rough. Her heart clenched. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to throw him out, to tell him he didn't deserve even an ounce of truth. But when she looked at her son, she knew she couldn't let pride get in the way. The boy deserved to grow up without doubts hanging over his head. "Fine," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "Let's do it. I have nothing to hide." The child looked up at them, confused, his innocent eyes darting between his parents. He didn't understand what a DNA test was. He only knew his mother's hand was trembling as she held his. A few days later, they went to the clinic. The process was simple, just a swab from the boy's cheek, a sample from the mother, and one from the father. But to them, it felt like a trial, a test of faith, a moment that could destroy or heal everything. The wife sat in silence, holding her son on her lap, her eyes wet but strong. She knew the truth. She had always known. But she feared the result wouldn't just reveal facts, it would also reveal the years of pain, the years of mistrust, the years of loneliness she had endured because of one man's suspicion. The husband sat across from her, unable to meet her gaze. His chest tightened with regret he dared not show. For 3 years, he had blamed her, hated her, left her to carry the burden alone. And now, waiting for the results. He feared what the truth might reveal about him, not just as a husband, but as a father. The nurse sealed the samples, promising results in a few days. The wife stood, lifting her son into her arms, and without looking back, walked out of the clinic. Those days of waiting stretched endlessly. The wife prayed for strength, not for herself, but for her son. The husband sat awake at night, haunted by nightmares of what the truth might say. And the child, innocent of it all, continued to laugh and play. Unaware that his very identity was about to be proven beyond doubt, the questions had lingered for years. Soon the answers would come. And when they did, they would change everything. The envelope sat on the table like a bomb waiting to explode. 3 days had passed since the DNA samples were taken, and every hour had felt like a year. The wife sat quietly in her small living room, her son playing with wooden blocks on the floor. She tried to look calm, but her hands trembled as she held the sealed paper in her lap. Across from her, the husband shifted uncomfortably in his chair. For once, he wasn't speaking with arrogance. He looked smaller somehow, weighed down by guilt he couldn't hide. His eyes kept darting to the envelope, then to the boy, then back to the floor. The silence was thick. Finally, the wife spoke, her voice steady, though her heart raced. "Do you want to open it?" The husband swallowed hard. His throat felt dry. He reached out with shaking hands, tore open the envelope, and unfolded the paper inside. His eyes scanned the words once, then again, as if he couldn't believe what he was reading. The child looked up curiously. "Papa, what is it?" The man's lips parted, but no words came. His hands shook as he passed the paper to his wife. She took it, her eyes following the lines that confirmed what she had always known. The boy was 100% his biological son. She exhaled, a tear sliding down her cheek. Relief filled her heart, but it was mixed with deep sorrow. For 3 years, she had carried the weight of a crime she never committed. For 3 years. Her son had lived without a father because of one man's suspicion. The husband leaned forward, covering his face with his hands. "My God, what have I done?" His voice cracked. Shame pressed down on him heavier than any burden he had ever carried. He looked at his son so innocent, so full of life, and realized he had abandoned his own flesh and blood. The boy, too young to understand DNA or betrayal, smiled brightly and ran toward him. "Papa!" he cried, throwing his little arms around the man's legs. The father froze, his guilt overwhelming, but slowly he bent down and hugged the child tightly. Tears poured from his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered into his son's hair. "I'm so sorry." The wife watched silently, her heart torn. Part of her wanted to scream, to pour out all the pain she had endured. She wanted him to know what it had been like to wake up alone, to hear the cruel whispers of neighbors, to hold a crying baby in the night with no partner by her side. But another part of her, the part that still carried love, just sat quietly, watching father and son embrace for the first time. When the father finally stood, he looked at her with eyes filled with regret. "I was wrong," he said hoarsely. "I should have trusted you. I should have trusted us. Please, can you forgive me?" Her lips trembled. Forgiveness was not easy. Forgiveness could not erase the years of suffering. She shook her head slightly, not in anger, but in pain. "You left me when I needed you the most," she said softly. "You left your son. Forgiveness will take time." The husband nodded, tears still streaming down his face. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply lowered his head, knowing that his greatest punishment was not the DNA results, but the 3 years he had thrown away. News of the DNA test spread quickly among their community. Those who had once whispered now hung their heads in shame. Neighbors who had doubted her apologized. Relatives who had judged her stayed silent. For the first time in 3 years, people saw her not as a woman accused, but as a woman vindicated. The wife carried herself with quiet dignity. She didn't boast, didn't humiliate her husband in return. She only said, "The truth always finds its way." Her son grew, now with both parents in his life, though the scars of the past would never fully fade. The father worked tirelessly to earn back their trust. Some wounds healed slowly, but with every laugh of his child. Every smile from his wife, he felt a piece of hope returning. The DNA had exposed the unimaginable, not betrayal, but the depth of his own mistake. And though it hurt, it also gave them a chance to start again, for the wife. The lesson was clear. Trust is fragile, but truth is eternal. For the husband, the lesson was harsher. Love without trust is empty, and suspicion can destroy what should have lasted forever. And for the little boy, innocent and pure, the truth gave him what he deserved all along, the love of both parents, and the knowledge that no matter the doubt, he truly belonged. The truth was out, but the truth did not erase the scars. The DNA paper sat folded neatly in a drawer, but its weight was still heavy on the wife's heart. Every time she looked at her husband, she remembered the night he abandoned her at the hospital. Every time she tucked her son into bed, she remembered how she had cried alone. Holding him when the world turned against her, the husband tried to make up for lost time. He visited often, bringing gifts for his son, sitting on the floor to play with him, reading him bedtime stories. To the little boy, it felt like magic. His father was finally there. But to the wife, it felt bittersweet. She watched them bond, smiling for her son's sake. But inside, she wondered if 3 years of absence could ever be undone. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, the husband spoke softly. "I know I don't deserve it, but I want another chance. Not just as his father, but as your husband. I was blind, I was weak. Please, let me come home." The wife's hands tightened around her teacup. She looked at him, her eyes filled with hurt. "You didn't just leave me," she said quietly. "You left him. You left your own blood." Do you know what it was like to hear him ask, "Where is Papa?" and have no answer? The words pierced him. He lowered his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I know," he whispered. "Every day I regret it. I was a fool. I thought I was protecting myself, but I destroyed us. If I could go back, I would hold your hand that night and never let go. But I can't. All I can do now is beg for the chance to rebuild." Her silence was long, but not cold. She was tired of anger, tired of carrying bitterness. Yet forgiveness was not a switch she could flip. Forgiveness was a bridge, and he had burned it. If he wanted to cross again, he would have to rebuild it stone by stone. The little boy wandered into the room then, clutching a toy. He looked up at them with innocent eyes. "Mama, Papa, why are you sad?" The wife bent down, pulling her son into her arms. She kissed his cheek and whispered, "We're not sad, my love. We're just learning how to be a family again." Her words touched the husband deeply. In that moment, he realized this wasn't about winning forgiveness in one day. It was about proving himself every day. It was about being there consistently, patiently, until the wounds began to heal. And so he tried. Slowly, carefully, he rebuilt. He attended school meetings, helped with homework, spent nights rocking his son to sleep. He didn't run when things were hard. He stayed steady as a stone. The community, once cruel with whispers, also began to change. Neighbors who had judged her now admired her strength. People who had doubted her apologized, though late. They praised her for raising her son with dignity, never breaking, never giving in to hate. Years passed, and though the betrayal was never forgotten, It became part of their story, a scar, but also a reminder of survival. The boy grew strong, surrounded by love from both parents. And when he was old enough, his mother told him the truth. Your father made a mistake, but he came back. He learned, and we all grew stronger. The boy nodded, understanding more than she expected. I know, Mama, he said simply, because I never stopped loving him. In the end, the unimaginable truth revealed by DNA was not just science, it was a second chance. A chance to heal what pride had broken. A chance to show that trust, once shattered, can be rebuilt if love is patient enough. And though their journey had been painful, the family stood together once more, not perfect, not without scars, but stronger than before.